Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Tyre Kickers, the hopefully slightly amusing, but probably a bit nerdy, classic car podcast. My name is Matt.
And I'm Max. Now, this week we're kicking tyres and picking cars from auctions, online and the classifieds to find the perfect classic.
We check the spec and argue the toss to find the ultimate four-wheeled fantasy.
See it, want it. This week it's MGBs. But are they too vanilla to be a proper classic?
Plus, we've got a new talking point called Oddball Obsession. This week, it's jam sandwiches and pandas as we talk about the classic cars you once hated to see in the rearview mirror.
So get the battery off trickle charge, give the accelerator a pump, and let's try and start episode 2 of the Tyre Kickers.
So we're back, and thank you for the great reaction so far to episode 1. It's been great to see and hear what you think, and also a bit of a relief to get the bloody thing edited and uploaded and out there. Thankfully, though, I've got Max to help with the technology.
But seriously, this podcast is for you, and the more you can get involved, the better. So please follow us on Instagram and like some posts and leave your comments. We love reading them, and it really spurs us on.
So let's rattle through some of the comments and give you some honourable mentions. Starting off with Chris Hayward Triathlon on Insta. He says, Max, what a great show. Totally relatable for us classic car fans. Look forward to the next one. Thank you, Chris.
Utopia Restorations say, a very good listen. Interesting about TR7s. My friends was rusty, no surprise there. He also says he drove a TD5 Defender to Newquay and back in a day and did it with ease. We were talking about Defenders, but then if he started in Newquay, that's not that impressive. But thank you for that. We'll talk Defenders more, I think, in the next few episodes.
The Alvis Car Company, you may remember in episode 1, we mentioned the jaw-dropping beauty of the TE21. They said, thanks for the kind words about that car. It's definitely a see it, want it car.
It's Only Me, Ruth says, quite concisely, great episode 1, keep it up.
Also on Instagram, Spanner is hungry, saving the episode for a solo drive tomorrow, he says. Not sure the kids would approve. Well, no, they'd be bored stupid, to be honest. And in the 30 minutes it's on, if they're teenagers, they'd probably rather watch 1,000 TikTok videos with someone saying, I was today years old when I learnt this. That's so annoying.
Brian from Malaga in Spain, our first overseas listener, says, love the podcast. You both bounce off each other nicely, very professional. I've never heard that before, certainly when we used to do this for a living.
No, you're not wrong. Ian, Defender Punk on Instagram says, it's funny how listening to other like-minded nerds makes you feel less of a nerd. Looking forward to the next one. That's a bit rude. I think he's talking about you, Max.
No, he's definitely talking about you. Nothing to do with me. I look like a nerd, but I'm just not one.
I think he sussed us, though. I think we are nerds. Although I think I'd like to call us knowingly nerdy.
Does that make it less worse? I don't think it does.
No, we'll take the compliment. Thank you, Ian, for your support. And I got one last one here, Max. It's a WhatsApp that I got off a good friend of mine called Zoran. He's a very straight-talking northerner from Morecambe Bay. He says this. Okay, just listen to Tyre Kickers, and you are indeed a geeky twat.
Have you got something to buzz out swear words? We can just beep that.
That will be bleeped. I think he does go on to say, I like the podcast, by the way. I think the first one was a bit more of an honest reaction, but he has got a Porsche on his drive at the moment, so he is interested, I think.
Hang on, what type? What kind? What model?
I have no idea. You know I don't know anything about Porsches.
That's not good enough to say I've got a Porsche. You need to qualify it.
I have no idea. They all look the same to me, Max.
Oh, and we're off.
Well, thank you, though. Keep all the comments, keep most of the comments coming in, apart from the rude WhatsApps. But we do really like the interaction, don't we, Max? I mean, it's been really genuinely heartwarming to see the reaction to the show. And even people I know who don't like car stuff have been kind enough to say they really enjoyed it, which is good.
Yeah, it's nice to know there are people out there that share our obsessions. We are not alone.
So, onwards and forwards, what have we been up to this week? Max, what have you been doing?
I've had one of those car nightmares because my Porsche 912 has been in storage for like 6 or 8 weeks, I think now, because you can't take it out because of the salt on the roads, and then it's raining and you can't put a wet car in the garage, blah, blah, blah. So it hasn't driven for, I reckon, about 2 months. Obviously went to start it, nothing ever works. Charged the battery, then it still didn't work, and I can't get fuel from the fuel tank in the front to the carburetors in the back. Relatively straightforward, you would think. This is turning into a bit of a nightmare. There's some fuel starvation. Maybe it's evaporated. I've taken a hammer to the fuel pump, and now I'm at the limit of my mechanical knowledge. So I'm going to have to tackle that probably tomorrow by sucking fuel out of the tubes, and that always risks setting yourself on the car on fire. So I may be here next time, I may not. So I've been swearing and hammering things. What about you, Matt?
Not a lot, really. My car's still in storage for the winter, so I'm sort of waiting for the season to start. I'm too chicken to take it out when there's salt on the roads and there's rain. I mean, hats off to all the people who've been doing classic car meets over the winter. It's actually been quite a mild winter, relatively, and they've sort of cracked on. There's another one I'm going to, a breakfast meet in Surrey next weekend, which is usually a good one. You get some great cars there, everything from 1920s Bentley Brooklands to a Hillman Minx to, some really, really beautiful stuff. There's some nice Porsches there, actually. You should come. But apart from that, really, I'm just waiting for the season to start. I obviously read Classic Car Weekly cover to cover on a Wednesday. That's a bit my Wednesday treat. If you're not subscribed to that, I would say get the digital edition and read that on your iPad. It's really a good fix of classic car stuff every week.
Also, the online auctions are coming back, which is a great relief because you kind of starved of any cars coming through in the winter. And now it's turning to spring and people are starting to put things up for sale. So the online auction catalogues have been really interesting. So that's a good look. So I fancy a couple of auction visits in the next couple of weeks.
Bring on the spring.
Okay, let's kick some tyres in the classifieds and see what's out there this week. Now, what have you found, first of all, Matt?
I found a 77 Mercedes 450 SLC. So it's one of the R107 breeds of SLCs. This is really, really nice. The problem is that I've always wanted a 107, a sort of 70s heart-to-heart convertible, and my friend's got one. I've driven it. It's really nice. It's a great classic, and it's a real head turner. I just can't get the seat back far enough. I'm 6'3". In an SL, it's just, they're built for sort of short, fat Germans, I think. So the SLC is a really interesting one. So it's the coupe version of that, but you can get the seat back. So this is a really tasty one. Diamond blue metallic, 53,000 miles from new. Is that a good thing? I'm not sure. But have a look at it. What do you think of that?
53,000 sounds quite small, isn't it, for a 77 car? Really nice, though. Those are the classic Bobby Ewing Mercedes, aren't they? The Mercedes SLs of the kind of 1980s, like you said, heart to heart. And they are lovely, and you can fit in those SLCs. The only thing is, I think the hard coupe roof slightly ruins the shape at the back. It's not quite as pretty.
Yeah, but I think it's more about can you fit in it for me. So this is an option. I think I do love the look of those 70s and early 80s SLs, and I'd love one, but I do need to be able to drive it and get in it. That's the thing. So I would that's the compromise. There's always a compromise with a car, and for me, that's probably the compromise with this one. But it's a pretty thing, isn't it? Diamond blue metallic. The only thing, and we need to talk about this, is that the trouble with the 107 series Mercedes, like a Kinder Egg of classic cars, isn't it? Where there's often a surprise waiting inside. Usually the rusty bulkhead, which is the problem with these cars. I'm looking for a mention of that in the copy, and I'm not seeing that unless you're seeing that anywhere. But it does say there's a bit of money being spent.
Yeah, those bulkheads is one of the places that it rusts and you can't see it unless you take it apart. So until you actually get involved in it, it's very difficult to find. But I think you can have a look at where the rain goes in the rain channels by the windscreen wipers. I think you can have a good look at that. And I'm just looking at the photo. That one looks okay. But it's a bit of a gamble, isn't it? And they are very expensive to fix. I do have a solution for you. If you have a look at this one, this is a 1995, again, another Mercedes. This is an R129 SL60. So this is the model after the Bobby Ewing one. It's the one that Bruno Sacco designed. I think it's beautiful. This one being an SL60 is very rare. They only made 49 in right-hand drive modes. It's got the deep dished alloys. It's azurite blue. It's got the lovely kind of beige leather interior. It is a gorgeous car. I love these R129s. They've got the M119 Mercedes V8, which is a fantastic engine, bored out to 6 litres, 375 brake horsepower. And also, I think this model came with the, after 95, came with the roof diagnostics, because that roof is really complicated. And I think it has a diagnostic system to tell you whereabouts it's gone wrong, which makes it a little bit cheaper to fix. But what do you think of that?
I think 53,000 is what I think. £53,000. Have you gone mental?
49 right-hand drive cars. 49.
I'd want the other 48 for that price.
You're never going to see another one on the road. That is fantastic. They are expensive, and the problem is it worth twice an SL500? Probably not, but it is really cool.
You're not going to see that on my drive, that's for sure. Not a 53 grand. I think an SL500. If you're into those cars, they don't really do it for me, I've got to say. But if you're into those, I'd go for an SL500. Save your money. Okay, so last week we talked about Rolls-Royces falling out of favour as wedding cars in favour of blinged-up Hummers and supercars, stuff like that. So we thought, which is the best and which is the worst classic car to transport you to your nuptials?
So I've been doing some very investigative research, less panorama, I suppose, more type something into Google for 2 minutes. So take a look at this, Matt. It's a wedding hire company. No names, no lawsuits. But let's have a look at what people are hiring for their big day.
Okay, I'm with you. Let's have a look at this. Oh, there's quite a lot of stuff, actually. So starting off with Range Rover. Let's get married to Range Rover. Like classic camper van, old Series 1 Defender. Is that Series 1 Defender? Will it get there? Not sure. Get there slowly. You might need to leave a week before. Ford Mustang, Ford Excursion. Oh, no, it's like a stretch. Oh, like a stretch SUV. American school bus. Who wants to get married in that?
Yeah, that is a bit weird, isn't it? There's a stretch limo. There is a smattering of rollers here. There's a Silver Spirit. And there's a Daimler DS420, the limousine that if you were a mayor in the 1970s used to tool around in. And there's lots of these. I've never seen these before. These things called Beaufords, Tora Ariana. They look like a kind of kit car, something that Penelope Pitstop might drive. I've got a feeling those are based on a transit chassis. So I'm not quite sure that's the thing you'd want to go to your wedding in. And also there is actually, I have seen there's a Silver Shadow. I thought they were extinct from the wedding car business, but there is a Silver Shadow. And a nice old Rolls 2024, a kind of 1930s limo. That's quite classy.
There's a McLaren GT. Obviously, that's sort of a modern choice turning up. And then there's a Mercedes E-Class AMG line saloon. Well, that looks like you're going to the airport rather than going to the church.
How much do you charge to go to Heathrow? Then there's a Lincoln Town Car, which is what all the stretch limos are made out of. And that's a white stretch limo. And then there's the Hummer and the Chrysler stretch limo. Oh, my God, these things are so tasteless. There's a Rolls-Royce Phantom. Not bad. Jaguar Mark II, I quite like that.
There's a Rolls-Royce Silver Spirit, which is what I think I got married in back in the Middle Ages. If you ask me about my wedding day, I sort of can't remember an awful lot. But I do remember how boring the taillights were on the back of the wedding car. So it must have been
your first thought on your wedding day? A Silver Spirit taillight?
It was one of many. It was one of many thoughts. But I know I do remember thinking, I think it was one of those 80s ones. They went a bit dull in the 80s, didn't they, the Rolls-Royce? They went a bit plain like everything sort of did. Did I tell you my classic car story involving my wedding day?
No.
You sound really interested. Hey, Max, did I tell you about the really interesting classic car story about my wedding day?
No, please do.
If you insist. So in order to get to the wedding, a good friend of my soon-to-be wife offered up his, 1969, I think, red MG Midget. And he said, I'll drive you to the church. So I got suited and booted, went round on the day, and we fired it up. Fred is his name, name check to Fred. And what I didn't realise was that the car was sort of off the road, and Fred had done his best to get it back on the road. It needed a new radiator. He was waiting for it to turn up. He remembers all this stuff. I don't know he remembers it. But what he'd done, he'd got together with a mate, and they'd lashed something together. So they'd put a mini radiator in it, put some cable ties in there to put it on, and got it going. And we only had to go short distance, but I think we got about 100 yards up the road before the radiator came away from the cable ties, hit the cooling fan, which then caused great gouges in the radiator. Had an argument with that, and then water went out everywhere. So we basically broken down, suited and booted, waiting to go to the wedding. But the good news was there was a plan B. Luckily, another family member had a backup, so I was taken to church in an Escort XR3i convertible. What do you think about that? It was Essex after all.
That's a cool car. Surprised it wasn't nicked.
Well, you've got to go with the flow. It does back up my theory, though, Max, that never use a classic car in a hurry. This is something I've sort of learned over the years, especially with mine, is that if you're in a rush, they can really knock you off classic cars, can't they? You do need to be sort of in a bit of a zen state with classic cars and not really needing to get anywhere in too much of a hurry.
Yeah, never rely on it. But I've just got to the end of the wedding car page and I found the Dukes of Hazzard Dodge Charger. Now that I would get married in that.
I'd love to see you in your Daisy Dukes. Now, if you listened to episode 1, you'll have heard our feature, See It, Want It. This is about those cars you spot at a car show or in a mag or on the internet, and then you become completely obsessed with them. Well, today, it's an easy car to get obsessed with. It is the everyman classic, the legend, the icon, the MGB.
In the beginning, sports cars were only for the very rich. But after World War II, along came MG, and the not-so-very-rich discovered it. Today's MGB has rack and pinion steering, race season suspension, 4-speed gearbox, and hefty 1798cc engine. A few reasons why the MGB is the most popular MG ever built. MG, the sports car America loved first.
Now, I think it's difficult to hate the MGB, mainly because I really, really like them. But here's the question. Is it a cop-out? It's easy to drive, it's easy to fix. So is it just too easy? Is it that ultimate civilian classic car, what the kind of man or woman in the street would buy? Is it just a cliche, a classic for people who aren't into classics? I still fancy one, but with our kind of superhero classic car knowledge that we share, is it the right car? So Matt, if you have a look at this one, this is a MGB Roadster in midnight blue, 1971. I drove this just before Christmas. I had a look at it because I really like MGBs. But the problem is, it's nice. And is it just nice? So paintwork's nice, interior's nice, body's nice, standard engine, pretty much standard. But in order to make it interesting, do you then have to mod it up? Do you have to put one of those nicer Selly 2-litre engines in it? Do you have to do something to the springs at the back to make it ride a bit better? Put a new exhaust on it, for example, better wheels. I mean, what do you think of this one, Matt? It's nice, but is it a bit boring?
No, this is right up the street for me. I think I disagree with you because I don't think you need to bling it up. I like MGBs, and I think the Roadster is the one I'd go for if I could fit in it. That's another story. I look like Dino the dinosaur when I drive these because the windscreen level is like below my forehead. Original is good in these. That's not the case with every car, but I think, things that tick the box for me are like the spokes, and just the nice sort of original chrome on it. The interior, for example, look, if you look at that interior there, they've got an aftermarket steering wheel on. I would put the original steering wheel back on, which is a contradiction because if you look at the pictures of my Sunbeam Alpine, which are on Instagram, I've put an aftermarket steering wheel on just because the original one was knackered. But secondly, the original one just didn't have enough kind of wow to it. This, however, has got the sort of flat racing steering wheel. I don't think it suits it, although I would think it's probably been put on there rather than a dished one just to get more leg room or knee room. So I would change that back. So for me, originality on these is really, really nice. We should say there is a reason that MGBs are so popular because they look great. They're your classic car. They turn heads. And they're fun. They are fun to drive. Are they fun to drive? I can't remember driving one, actually.
Not particularly in standard form. I mean, they're okay, but they're not that exciting. My problem is that, you and I know a bit about classic cars, and people know that. And then if you know something about classic cars and you turn up in an MGB, people are going to go, oh, right, is that the extent of your imagination? So I'm going to pull the pin on a grenade here and toss the grenade in. So here are 3 alternatives. First one, this is probably the most controversial, Honda S2000 is ready to go. What do you think of that?
Nah, it's not special enough. I think it's not old enough to feel special. I mean, that's a weekend car. That's a sort of what people would define as a weekend car. Lovely car, nice to drive, put in the garage, pull out the weekend, give it a wash, take it out, and then put it back in the garage and have it serviced once a year. I just think if you turn the key, that's like having a Porsche Boxster in the garage, an old Porsche Boxster, which I would say is a brilliant weekend car. 5,000 to 10,000, put it in the garage, get it serviced once a year, change the tyres, fill it with fuel, enjoy it. I think the S2000's the same. It's not, for me, what I would call a classic car.
Okay, interesting, because those S2000s, I mean, they drive beautifully and they're ready to go. It's not going to fall apart as much as an MGB, and it probably won't take as much maintenance. So yeah, I get your point. So, okay, let's try this next one then. So this is a 1988 BMW E30 325i convertible. So this is about 10 years older than the S2000. A great alternative to the MGB because it drives nicely. It rusts, so it will make you feel at home. And it's got a really nice engine. So that's an alternative to an MGB. Roughly the same price, around 20,000 compared to a modded MGB. But just a beautiful car. It has that kind of 80s feeling to it. And it's a lovely drive. So what about that?
Well, I really like these. I think they've got old school headlights, the cabin that wraps around the driver. And I just remember driving one of these sort of 20 years ago. And it was on its sort of last knockings, and you just put your foot down, it just had that creaminess, which is sort of missing from cars these days. That sort of, what would this been, 2.5 litre injection, just you put your foot down, it's that wafty, sort of auto gearboxy, I don't know how to quite describe it, but there was something about these cars, weren't there?
There was, and they're even better if they're not auto, to be honest, because the manual gearbox is really nice.
What?
I did drive one a few weeks ago. The auto's a little bit of a slush-matic, but the manuals are really quite nice gearboxes, and they make it handle. It does zip along. There's not too much, well, there's virtually no scuttle shake, to be honest. There's a bit because it's convertible, but for a 1980s car, it's a corker. And I think that is probably a good MGB alternative because it's different. It's still something of a classic car because it's an 80s classic, but it doesn't have the clichéness of an MGB.
Last week you said I was rarely wrong. This week I'm going to say you're always usually wrong, and you're wrong on that because that's not it's not a classic car. It's not needy enough to be a classic car. Where's the pain? Because no pain, no gain. I think that again you could probably service that once a year or twice a year and you'd be done.
Fantastic.
But is it a classic to rival the MGB? Nah.
No, you're very wrong on that. The auto box on that is terrible. The manual's much better and it makes it really quite a sporty drive. Okay, so if you're not going to do the E30 and you're not going to do the S2000, here is what I think is the ultimate anti-MGB argument. And it's a 2007 Aston Martin V8 Vantage Roadster for sale for £22,000. That's the estimate at auction.
Yeah, again, a great car, but you've sort of gone off on one on this one. I don't think these are alternatives to MGBs. I think, being brutally honest, I think you've got your Sunbeam Alpine, which is a great alternative to it. You've got a Triumph TR6, which is a great alternative to it. But I think you would come back to the fact that the MGB is a great car, whether it's a starter car. I don't think it's too boring. I think, let's be honest here, there is a little bit of snobbery around the MGB. I think because it is an entry-level classic, although, like everything, the minute you start looking for the perfect MGB, you're in the 20s. But I think there's a snobbery to it, but it is a beautiful car. And I bet you that if you take someone who's not into classic cars to a classic car meet somewhere and say, which one do you like? They'll pick the shiny red MGB Roadster on spokes. I mean, my classic car friend Paul has got an MGB, beautiful thing. Absolutely gone through it. It's absolutely mint. And on a summer's day, I can't think of a better classic car, apart from my one, because I can get in it. But a Sunbeam Alpine, TR6, I think those are the cars that are MGB equivalents. But why are we going away from the MGB? I think it's a good enough car to see it and want it. I think the other factor to bear in mind, Max, is that how many people get into classic cars because they see an MGB?
But surely an MGB can lead on to other stuff. Now, an MGB, I think, is a great starter. But if you know stuff about cars, it's just too obvious. It's too Tesco, if you see what I mean. They're ubiquitous. Everybody can talk about them.
But look at the other plus points of having an MGB. You've got great parts support, great club support. You've got lots of choice. You don't have to schlep for 200 miles to find your ideal car. You've got something to invest in and care about. And I come back to this point that having a classic car is a hobby. And if you get something more modern as an equivalent, it's not really much of a hobby, is it? You're going to put it in the garage. Garage goes down. See you next weekend. So I think part of the thing, and you've related to this in the past in episode 1, you like thinking about your car. You like planning what it needs doing. You keep that list on your phone of all the stuff that needs fixing, the bits you want to get. I mean, mine's still in storage, but already my list is about 15 items long. And it is that challenge of having a classic car, which I think you don't get in a modern car. So I think the MGB is a perfect starter car, mid-level car. And if you want to throw money at it and do top dollar, a restored MGB. I don't think anybody, apart from car snobs, and stuff them, for example, don't do it for other people. Do it for yourself. If you've got to gel with it. If you go and sit in an MGB and you drive one and you love it and you turn around and look back at it after you've got out of it, it's the car for you. If it isn't, go and do something else. But I think the snobbery about MGBs needs to go. And I would devil's advocate something back at you, Max. You love your cars. You're into your cars. You've got loads of cars. You've got an old historic Porsche, but you were going looking at MGB. So why was that?
Well, because I just look at everything, to be honest. But I was looking at the MGB because it kind of filled in the gap that the Porsche didn't, because the Porsche's got a roof and the MGB hasn't. And that ultimate blast car through a B road on a sunny Sunday afternoon. My problem about this is that how many times do you actually do that? Whereas with the Aston Martin, for example, instead of writing a list of must get some screws and must get some grommets, must go to the south of France.
Yeah, but you'd be bored. You'd be bored.
I think I would. My problem with the MGB is that everybody else has got one. And I think you and I and the listener should try and be a bit different because we know stuff about cars. It's too easy. And there are just too many of them around to really be that interesting. And I think if you want to occasionally clip an apex, if you want to have a bit of a wind in your hair and you want to roar from the exhaust, there are other things which do that and do other things a bit better, like drive, reliable, and start.
Throughout this conversation, MGB owners, I have been fighting your corner, which is why I've been having a go at Max, because I think he's wrong on this. There are a lot of very satisfied MGB owners out there on Instagram, which I've seen. So please give us a comment and tell us what you think. Tell us about your MGB. Why would you say it's the perfect classic car? And why do you think it's lasted so long? Do drop us a line. Our Instagram is at the Tyre Kickers UK. Let's move on. If you'd like something old but maybe a bit more left field, well, that sort of fits with our next feature. It's called Oddball Obsessions.
This week, we're not going to talk about the classic that overtakes you. We're talking about the ones behind you that you saw in your rearview mirror with the blue lights on. Yep, classic British police cars. So, which jam sandwich was the best?
We're after the best looking, the best handling, the most sinister thief taker on four wheels. So, Max, ply us with the list of plod cars.
Okay, so Rover P6 3500S, the SD1 on that liver run on YouTube, the Sweeney Ford Granada, that wasn't marked, the CR5 count, I suppose, the Caprice, and the CR5 Granada smashing through the window. Then, of course, we're down to the Mark II Escorts of Juliet Bravo, pretty boring. The Bergerac Triumph Roadster, Morse's Mark II Jag, Mini Panda car, two-door Range Rover. Now, I actually got nicked by a two-door Range Rover on the M5 when I was driving a Porsche 924, and I had three mates in it who were quite small, admittedly. They were all drinking. I can't believe I broke the speed limit in a 924 with three people in it. But somehow I did. I got pulled over by a two-door Range Rover, and I was patronised to death for about 25 minutes.
Yeah, you miss those old school coppers, don't you? There was always they always had a moustache, and they were quite patronising.
Yeah, very much so. Very old school. I mean, the other police cars I remember, the Triumph 2.5 PI, and of course all the Volvos. I remember Volvo V70s. I still think a white Volvo V70 does give me the chills because it was so ubiquitous on the motorways for so long and such a good police car. And of course the Sierra Sapphire Cosworths, they were quite good. What about you? What gives you the fear?
I think for me, I learnt to drive and I passed my test in the late 80s. So it would have been like an Escort or a Rover or something like that. And you would have seen that in your rearview mirror. And you'd also have seen all the other cars that were white that you saw in your rearview mirror back in those days, and also the headlights. Was it just me that did this? But I used to sort of memorize what the headlights of those cars looked like so that you could slow down.
Some of the stuff that we learned to drive in, if I got a speeding ticket for it, I would have framed it because it was so slow. I did get stopped in a Mark II Golf once, which I think was the 1.6, and that was by a couple of policemen in a Ford Sierra. So I wasn't quite sure which one it is. And apart from the Range Rover, I've been stopped again by a Volvo V70, but also when I was working in the States, they had much, much cooler police cars. And I remember being stopped by a Ford Mustang, one of the two-door ones, and also a couple of those Chevy Caprices that, do you remember, they were always in the Dukes of Hazzard. Roscoe used to drive the square Chevy Caprices, so I got nicked by a couple of those.
You've had quite a long career of being pulled over, haven't you?
Yeah, I did used to speed a little bit. I mean, I think I only had 3 points. I think that bloke in the Range Rover gave me 3 points. The others just gave me a stern ticking off. And to be honest, I would prefer the 3 points sometimes rather than the patronising. But British cop cars were a little bit weedy, most of them. And it was only really the sexy stuff on the motorways.
The interesting thing is when they turn up at classic car shows now, like a Fiesta or an old Escort or it's one of those 80s ones, they do get a bit of a crowd. Is it a good investment as a classic car? Is it a good left field thing as a classic car, Max, to get a plod car?
Oh, you use the word investment then, and I think we know now, particularly at the moment, the way prices are going, that classic cars are not an investment. But I think it would be quite nice. I've read a couple of books about police cars because it's a nerdy knowledge thing, and they're quite cool. I think they're quite good. I'm not sure I would want to drive one, though. It's a bit wedding car, isn't it?
So those are the classic police cars of old, and that's got me a bit nostalgic for it. I think my rest of my evenings can be lost looking on the internet at old police cars. But that's a good one, Max. Good idea, that. If you've got an idea for an oddball obsession car, it will be a feature that we bring back sort of every few weeks or something. Do drop us a line on our Instagram at the Tyre Kickers UK.
Okay, let's have a final flick through the classified ads. Now, I've found this, which I'm really quite keen on. It's a Jaguar Mark II 340. It's a manual overdrive. The 340 was the last of the Mark IIs. It's in gunmetal grey. It's got a red leather interior, a UK-supplied right-hand drive, older restoration, believe genuine 90,000 miles from new. Yeah, right, okay. And it's on at $17,995. Now, in the classic car bubble 3 times ago, the Mark IIs were absolutely the poster car for overpaying for a classic car. Now look at them, $18,000 for a Mark II, and it's a really nice one as well. What do you think about that?
I think that's really tasty. It's like the antidote to the jam sandwiches and plod cars, isn't it? It's like it's the bank robber's car, but this one's been pimped a little bit. It's got black spokes on it, as you say, the red interior, gunmetal grey. It's got a bit of something about it, hasn't it?
You'd love to take that out. The manual gearbox is really nice. The colours are really nice. Paintwork's a bit tired and some of the leather's a bit ripped, but does it really matter? £18,000 is not a huge amount for a Jag Mark II these days. And that looks nice. It looks like it's been well looked after, got a bit of service history, and it's got a bit of history dating right back to when it was sold new. So that's a good story. It's a nice car.
It looks like it's done probably a couple of bank jobs. Do you reckon you get sawn-offs thrown in on that?
Sawn-offs and wearing somebody else's tights on your head.
I think that's a really interesting choice, that one, which is unusual for you because normally you pick a lot of old rubbish. But Jag Mark IIs are great. They're an iconic classic car, but I was sort of getting them and they just don't do it for me. I think this is just a bit sexier. You know, it's got, as I say, black spokes with chrome knockoffs on it. And the gunmetal grey is a bit faded around the edge, but it's got that sort of almost matte look to it, that sort of modern matte look. It's quite mean. Can we go and have a look at this one?
I really like that. And also the thing about the Mark IIs is you're effectively getting an E-Type that you can take your mates to the pub with. It's a great car. I can't see a single downside to that, apart from maybe a bit of maintenance, but then, so what? I think that's a really good buy.
It's a steal.
Right.
Oh, that was a joke, but you didn't react.
Is that some tumbleweed? I can see some tumbleweed in the corner. Is it moving across your bit as well?
All right, and from the Jag then, let's show you what I've found. 1958 Austin Healey in blue and Old English white, a two-tone thing. This is really nice. The write-up on this looks really good. Matching numbers, fully rebuilt. It's had like LED lights, soundproofing, lots of stuff going on. And look at the price, Max.
Yeah, that is nice. $49,995 for a Healey 106. It's left-hand drive, so let's just get that out to start with, but the colour scheme is fantastic. That is such a nice car. Healey's are beautiful. I mean, that is your classic car. I know we were talking about MGBs earlier, but I do think a Healey really does set everybody on fire when it pulls up. That is a corker.
I like it. I like the interior is really nice. Blue piped leather. The piping is in white. I would really like this. And I think for 50 grand, I love a Healey. I love the look of a Healey. A real head turner. I was sat in a pub with a friend last year and one pulled into the car park. And I just thought, right, I'm selling the Sunbeam. I'm getting that. The thing about that, it's actually, when you look at a Healey, it's a big car, but like a lot of sort of 50s design car, the actual sort of driving position is right in your face, isn't it? Right up against the wheel, and the wheel's right up against the windscreen.
I would buy that to look at it and then jump in a V8 Vantage to drive it.
I think both of those cars are really, really nice. So we'll give a shout out to where they are. If you want to go and have a look at this Healey, it's on with Classic Chrome in Mortlake in London. Go have a look if you're into that. I think that would be a beautiful car. Do you want to just name check where your Jag was?
The Jag is from Justin Banks, and I like a lot of Justin Banks stuff. I seem to spend a lot of time on Justin Banks' website, which he'll be delighted about, but that Jag is really nice, and I think that is a great alternative to kind of a more expensive E-Type that you might be worried about using, whereas you can jump in the Jag and you're off at the pub, and it looks fantastic.
I've got an idea. Let's get the Jag, go rob a bank, and then we'll go and buy the Healey.
I don't think you can rob banks anymore. They don't have cash in them, do they? You would just come away with a load of leaflets about mortgages.
No, you can't rob them because there aren't any. They've shut them all down. We'll have to think of a plan B.
Just drive around in the Jag all the time to try and find... You seen a bank, mate?
So that's about it for this week's episode, I'm afraid. If you've enjoyed it, please do let us know. And please, please, please spread the word to your classic car loving friends.
So the best way for both of those things is via our Instagram page. You'll find us at the Tyre Kickers UK. It's an orange logo with an old Porsche on it.
You'll also find there all the links to listen to the show on your favourite podcast service, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts or Amazon Music. But there also is there just a link that you can play it straight away. So send it to anybody. They don't need to be signed up to anything to listen to the podcast.
Just click on the link at the top of our Instagram page and see everything there.
I think it's called Link in the Bio, Grandad. But click on that link and it will put a link tree down. I had to explain to Max what that was. And you'll get the options there to go and do some more stuff. We'll post pictures of the cars we talked about this week there as well and tag some honourable mentions.
So please do get involved with our Instagram. It really is great to read comments and also know people are actually out there.
I'm actually genuinely thankful for the comments that have gone on there. I mean, it gave us a bit of a kick, didn't it, during the week?
Yeah, it was nice to know there are people out there.
Yeah, so please interact with us on our socials. Just leave a comment. That's the best way to do it. And please just spread the word. That's all. We're doing this for fun. You know, we're not doing it. Our days of doing radio for money are long and truly buried. We just about scraped a living when we did do it for a living. But no, we're doing this for fun. So please, whatever support you can give by spreading the word is much appreciated.
So until the next episode, please enjoy your classics. I hope they work, unlike mine, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. My mic's drooping. It's my lap.
It's your age. It's your age.
I can't keep it up.
Love the podcast. You both bounce off each... Oh, sorry, I'm doing that again.
Very professional.
Exactly, yeah. Well, luckily they never hear this bit.